On behalf of the board and staff of AdvantageWest, I'd like to welcome you to our third AdvantageWest Economic Summit. My name is Tom Alexander, and I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the board of directors for AdvantageWest. And first of all, I want to welcome all of you from across our 23-county region and across the state to this important event tonight. I would like to welcome State Senator Tom Apodaca. Tom is an entrepreneur from Henderson County. He is serving his fifth term in the North Carolina Senate. He's representing District 48, which includes Buncombe, Henderson, and Polk counties. First elected to the Senate in 2002, he currently serves as chair of the North Carolina Senate Rules Committee. He has been ranked as one of the most effective members of the North Carolina General Assembly. Tom, would you come out, please? Thank you, Tom. My pleasure. Can you find your way over? Okay, good. Our next panelist for this evening is Dr. John Bardo. He is the former chancellor of Western Carolina University. I think most of you know him or know of him. He served from 1995 until his recent retirement this past July. He is Western Carolina University's longest-serving chancellor since 1972, and after a sabbatical of about a year, he will return to the university as a faculty member. John, if you don't mind, please come out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Our next distinguished panelist is Vice Chief Larry Blythe of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, who won re-election in September of 2011. And he was originally elected in 2003. He's a lifelong resident of Western North Carolina. Vice Chief Blythe served for a number of years on the Tribal Council of Eastern Band of Indians, Cherokee Indians, representing both the Wolftown as well as the Paint Town communities. Vice Chief, if you would come out. Thank you, And our last distinguished panelist for the evening is an old friend of mine. We grew up together here in Asheville, North Carolina, and he has served our state very well for a long number of years. I think you all know him, Senator Martin Nesbitt. He's an attorney with a practice in Asheville. He represents District 49. He covers most of the Asheville and Buncombe County area, and he's serving his fourth term in the state Senate. He was elected Majority Leader in 2010 and Democratic Minority Leader in 2011. Please welcome Martin Nesbitt. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Appreciate it. At this point, it's my distinct honor and privilege to welcome our moderator, Mr. D.G. Martin. D.G. is well known across the state as a newspaper columnist. He's a contributor to Our State magazine, and he's a longtime host of UNC TV's program, which is known as North Carolina Book Watch. He also has a daily radio program in Chapel Hill where he brings together the greatest political minds and thought leaders in our state. DG is a retired lawyer and university administrator. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Martin to the stage. Thank you, DG. Now, DG has promised not to leave until he can deliver some good news tonight. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, first of all, I want to say how happy I am to be back in Western North Carolina. Well, not Western North Carolina, but the eastern part of Western North Carolina. These guys from across the Boston will let me get away with saying I've been west.
That's right.
But it's a treat for me to be here with you all and to experience the exuberance of people who have always shown that when times of stress come, these are times to plan, to get ready for the better times. And so I'm just thrilled to be in the company of this distinguished panel and with all of you all. I saw a lot of action out there before this got started. Tom said I was going to deliver good news. What he's talking about is that I said that I'm from out of town, and so I brought the answer to all of our economic problems, but you have to stay to the end to get it. I was teasing. I don't have the answers, but we're looking for some help tonight as we discuss the overall health of the North Carolina economy, and particularly on how public and private institutions can work together to encourage economic growth. And of course, we want to talk with our legislators and with each other about the challenges that the state budget presents us and what we can do together to support a vibrant private sector as a key to getting out of these economic challenging times. We want to look, as always, about how education can contribute to a better, healthy economy, and talk among each other about the challenges that our education systems face right now and what we might be able to do here to improve things. We want to look at some of the issues, of course, that are particular to Western North Carolina. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the importance, the potential contributions of the gaming industry. In general, we want to visit about how our educational institutions and how the private sector can interact with the General Assembly to drive, or to help you drive, innovation and entrepreneurism in our state, and particularly in Western North Carolina. Now, we haven't rehearsed this. We've talked in general terms about some of the questions that will arise, but when you get this crowd together, there'll be things that will come up in your minds that aren't directly responsive to the questions, or there'll be things that you'd want to react to as different panelists answer questions. So please feel free, while we've got you, to contribute at any stage of the game. Now, I'd like to start because one of the people I admire most is your former Chancellor Chancellor Emeritus. You're always Chancellor for me, Chancellor Bardo. But I understand that since you've retired, you're studying on what the business environment is in Western North Carolina and what some of the challenges are. And could you start us out by telling us what you found out and what you have yet to learn and what you need to find out?
You bet. And DJ, I'll try to do this in a really short fashion because it's a fairly complex study. What I'm looking at and what really got this started is if you look around the country and listen to the political leaders both in this state and out around in other states, they're talking about the need to create a lot more college graduates if we're going to be competitive in the market. And I started thinking about that. I thought, well, what if everybody majors in basket weaving? Is that really going to make us globally competitive to have another 200, 300,000 basket weavers? It might in basket weaving, but I don't know what we're going to do with that. So the real question that I started looking at was, what does it mean to have a college education, and under what conditions does that college education actually help the economy? And it isn't just uniform. It doesn't mean just everybody should go out and get a degree. There's some very specific things that seem to work and not work, and I just will share with you 4 of them. I'm looking at all 50 states and at the economies of all 50 states, and particularly focusing on median household income. What are the differences in the income? Can we explain those differences by looking at the structure of their economy and the structure of their population? And secondly, what about their per capita GDP? How productive are those states? And what do we know about that productivity? And then the third issue is we know that there are great variations in unemployment among the states. Can we predict, using normal sociodemographic variables and normal economic variables, can we predict the differences in those states in their unemployment rate? And the fact is we can do all 3 of those things. I can explain about 80% of the differences in income, and about 60% of the differences in GDP, and about a third of the differences in unemployment. There are 4 key elements to all of this, and just share with you those 4 key elements. Number 1 is business innovation. It shows up over and over and over again. Where you have businesses, where you have that are growing, these are mainly small and medium-sized enterprises, where you have a lot of industry R&D, where you have a lot of venture capital, and where you have a lot of SBIRs and STTRs. These are the loans that small business technology people can get to try to get their business started. And where you have a lot of engineers in the labor force and a lot of graduate scientists in the labor force, you tend to have a strong economy. Where those things are not true, you tend not to. The second key to all of this is academic innovation. And the measures of academic innovation are all related to the level of work being done by your universities in your state. So, for example, the amount of grant money that the universities in your state get as a percent of your state GDP is very important. Not just the amount of grant money, but the amount of grant money in relation to the state GDP. The number of graduate students you have in science and engineering and health, very important to the state. The number of traditional students who can afford to go to school at 18 and go full time, and the percentage of high school graduates in your state's population are the key indicators around academic innovation. And where those things are strong, you tend to have stronger economies. Where they're not, you tend not to. The final two I want to talk about just very briefly. One is the structure of your population. Where you have people going to college who are primarily women, primarily minorities, and primarily low income, you tend to have a less strong economy than where you have more traditional students. Why? Because these folks have generally not been included in the economy and in ways that make it work well. The final one that I want to mention is the degree to which you have to tuition discount to get people to go to school. If a state has to provide a lot of non-need-based financial aid just to get people to go to college, they tend not to be doing very well economically. So what you see is a combination, when you look across all the states, of business innovation, education-related innovation, and then what you're doing to include your populations that have historically not had strong ways of getting into the economy. Those really seem to be making the big difference. For North Carolina, the projections aren't that good. Our unemployment rate is among the highest in the country today, and work that has been done out of Georgetown University is saying that we will lag the country in the percentage of high-paying jobs over the next 10 to 20 years. The nation itself should recover, but North Carolina will lag, and it will not get as high as the other states on average. And so there's a lot of work that we can do and should be doing in North Carolina, and that's really kind of teach you just a quick overview. Be happy to talk about details of what we can and should do.
Before the panelists jump in, localize this for the 23 counties of western North Carolina as if it were a state, and
sure.
Suggest some of the things, not only the special characteristics, but what is possible to do at this stage.
There's a lot that's really possible. If you look at the structure of the economy in the South, the economy of the South has organized itself into a super region that runs basically from Knightdale on the eastern part of Raleigh all the way down to the central part of Alabama, with its big hub being Atlanta. Western North Carolina is right along the major arteries that define that region. And so the potential in Western North Carolina is huge. The potential in this area is as good as it is in Charlotte, as good as it is in Raleigh, but the state really hasn't made investments in this area at the level that it could have, and in my opinion should, and the opportunities are here. If you look at specifically the western region, the I-26 corridor running from North Asheville down to Greenville, Spartanburg, and I-85 defines the economic center of this part of the state. The unemployment rate along that center is much lower than it is in the rest of the region. The population growth is greater than it is in the rest of the region. And so there's a huge amount of potential here, but it's going to take investment in the universities in areas that historically have been limited in this part of the state. It's going to take a real look at venture capital and at the way we deal with taxes around encouraging venture capital. That's a state issue, but can have huge impact in this end of the state. And then third is going to be recognizing that Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson really are going to continue to play a huge role in what happens in western North Carolina. And, you know, we're not the Hawaiian Islands. There is something beyond our border, and there's a lot that this state, I believe, can do to cause those linkages to be built. And so far that hasn't happened, and it's neither party seems to have grabbed onto that and run with it. It's not, it's not a partisan question. It really is much more of a question of focusing on what is possible in the West.
Well, that leads us to another question that I think I'd like to ask Senator Nesbitt to speak to. Chancellor Bardo says we need investments in order to realize the potential, but at the same time, the General Assembly is operating under terrible challenges in terms of the resources that are available, and that you've had to make some tough choices in the recent sessions. Nothing's been spared. What, from your perspective, can the legislature do to focus on these challenges that Chancellor Bardo has mentioned and other things that the state needs to be doing?
Well, he's opened up topics we could talk about for the next hour. And I expected him to do so, but he didn't. He surprised me.
Well, I bet you if you gave him permission, he might go on a little bit longer.
And we may need to listen to him some more. Mm-hmm. I tell you, the situation that we have in this state, as a region, we don't have some of the assets other places have, and it's just that simple. We don't have a Research Triangle Park where the state could make that huge investment in infrastructure and build off of 3 major universities and build a research center that's the envy of the nation. It's one of the top 3 places in the country to live. We're never going to have a major airport. That limits us somewhat. We have a good airport, but it's not going to be what major corporations want. We somewhat in the mountain counties have a problem with land and places people can build. But and I've always approached it as trying to work with what we have to work with. I remember I started in the General Assembly back in the 80s under a speaker named Liston Ramsey from Madison County. And he made the statement one time, he said, I wish that everybody up in my part of the country, he was from Madison County, was into microelectronics, but they aren't. And he said, we got to invest in what our people do. And I think we've done a fairly good job of that along the way. We have found strengths and we built on those. I know back in the 80s and 90s, we built on agriculture. We built the farmers market. We built the experiment station out there. It's one of the finest in the country. And for instance, when our people were having to give up tobacco, if you noticed in the West, we really didn't have a crisis because our farmers were able to move to other crops. They were able to move to woody ornamentals. They were able to, we developed a tomato up here that was the most popular tomato on the East Coast, and it grew best right here. And I take you back a bit. We don't think of ourselves as having a lot to do with agriculture, but trust me, we do. I think I just heard we were number 2 in the nation in Christmas trees. 30 years ago, we didn't have Christmas trees. So we build on what we've got. And what I think is the thing that we can always do and should always do is work to better educate our people. All of the things Dr. Bardo talked about work off of brain power. And the more we educate our people, the better they will perform. If everybody in this room went and got another year of education, we'd make more money. And I don't know why that is, but I know it is. You can see it from every statistic that you've seen. When you improve yourself, you're more productive. You can find other ways to go about things. And one of my biggest disappointments this year has been that we have taken a step backward in education, and I hope we can correct that quickly. Our community colleges had 10% growth the last 2 years. Our people want to go get an education. They want to go learn a new trade. They want to learn some new skills. We cut their budget 10% this year. And I asked some of the folks the other day, what does that mean? Does that mean that some people can't get in? They said, oh, no, we're going to keep our doors open. Everybody can get in. They just can't get the courses they need. Well, somehow that doesn't resonate with me. I mean, they're going there to get something. We need to give it to them. Thank goodness we were able to get the 1/4-cent sales tax up here. Hank Dunn is my all-time hero. I can't see out there, or I would point him out. But just let me give you an example. We've known for years that we needed nurses. There have been nursing positions open all over the state of North Carolina. We couldn't get the community colleges to produce them. When we found out why, it was because of lack of clinical space. They just couldn't get but so many through the hospitals and the clinical space. At Catawba Valley, they built a virtual hospital inside a building so that they could simulate this clinical space, and they told us, now I don't know, I hadn't checked behind them, but they told us they would double their output of nurses by doing that. I think that's what Hank's on to. I know it's Allied Health that he's working on for that new building. And we've got to get our people educated and get them out into the jobs that pay good, that they want to do, to move this economy forward. It's that simple. And then, at the end of the day, we live off small business. I mean, that's what we are. We're not a big business group. They opened the Kimmel Arena the other night. Most people, now a lot of you probably do, but most people didn't know who Kimmel was. He started an internet company in an old building up behind Haywood Park up there, worldwide. And we didn't know he was there until he started giving money. Then we all went and figured out who he was. I happened to have known him a little earlier because my son's a banker and he knew him. But what a great story. I mean, he came here and started that business, and it was worldwide. So I would say, you know, the problem with venture capital, I don't know. They'd just rather go to the Triangle Park where they can cherry pick. I've tried to drive them up here. You can't do it. And a lot of the other problems that they don't have that we have, I just think we got to work around, and we got to better educate our people and build our economy with small business like we've always done up here.
Well, that leads to further discussion about community college system, and Senator Apodaca, you have an interest in that. And what about community colleges? How can we address some of the questions that Senator Nesbitt raised? And are they basically doing a good job, and what else do they need to do?
I think the majority of our community colleges in the state of North Carolina are doing a phenomenal job. When we went into this budget crisis, you know, hunting $2.5 billion, trying to stabilize the bleeding in Raleigh, I personally met with Scott Rawls, Hank Dunn, Molly Parkhill, and I said, guys, this is what we're facing. Please tell me, you know, what you can live with, what you cannot live with. And, of course, it's like asking your children, do they want to give back a little of their allowance? And, of course, they did not. But in complete fairness, and to tell you the quality of people we have here in our system, they said if we didn't get much worse than 10%, they thought they could control, you know, the outcomes of their particular institutions. And I applaud them for that leadership. This gentleman here, we've been together since 1996 when I served on his board and went through some times back then with budgeting, and I learned a lot from that. But ultimately, I feel like, and I don't want to upset my higher ed people, but I personally feel the community colleges are our most vital link into the recovery and to moving forward and getting the pay scale to where it needs to be in North Carolina, and particularly Western North Carolina. We're still, we talk about the three-legged stool, you know, textiles, tobacco, and furniture. And, you know, we have all three of those in this area, and particularly got hurt with two of those legs. And in order to recover from that, I personally feel, and I think Martin hit upon it, and John's talked about it, small business is going to be the answer to get us out of this. Because we're not going to have the major corporations wanting to flood into this area and come. I wish we could. But we are, you know, the companies of 50 to 100 employees, that's perfect for us. Even lower than that, 10 to 50. And I think we need to look towards incentivizing those people to come because of our quality of life. And there's no finer place to live. I grew up in Durham, God knows, and I came up to Western in 1976 and never wanted to go back. And we do spend a lot of time in Raleigh, but I always look forward to seeing the mountains. So I think we've got to nurture our entrepreneurial spirit. I know in Cullowhee we started an entrepreneurial program ahead of most people, and I think that's a program that's paying dividends. As a matter of fact, I have 2 children that graduated from that program, so I'm a little partial to that. But I think that's going to be our answer And even in this budget crisis, we did one thing that's gotten very little play, is we put a $50,000 tax credit on the first portion of income from a small business. So the first $50,000 is non-taxable at state level to incentivize and try to get it to move forward. So I hope as we go on, we can talk a little more.
Well, I hope we can talk some more, but I mean, when you talk about coming from Durham, I don't want to say, I love Chapel Hill, and I'm very happy to be there, but I'm surrounded by this cadre of young people who are the intellectual superiors of most of us, and they're thinking about doing things. And when you ask them where they want to live, they want to live in Asheville.
Yeah.
They want to come, or they want to live in the mountains. And so yes, it's not just developing among mountain people.
Right.
The entrepreneurial spirit is opening the gates for immigrants
Sure.
to come
Exactly.
who want to live here.
I hope you mean that by location.
Well, from other counties of North Carolina and surrounding areas, I don't want to, but also, yeah, heck yes, we'll debate that. Immigrants,
Absolutely.
Highly qualified immigrants from other countries may want to
Absolutely.
live here. Let's open gates
DJ, I
for them.
think what they're really hitting on is very important. If you look at what's going on around the whole United States, big businesses really aren't adding jobs. And the future isn't in big business. The future is in small and medium-sized enterprises. That's where the innovation is occurring. That's where the startups that actually will hire are going to be. And so the real key for this end of the state, it's not just unique to Western North Carolina. It is the way of the future for this state and for this country. And so I think the critical policy questions this state is going to face is how we help encourage the kind of support systems that allow these businesses to function well outside of the triangle. Because you can't have the triangle being wealthy and everywhere else in the state being poor and having the state succeed. The state has got to begin to rise and push itself up in much broader fashion than it has.